remember that you can always go back to all of the samples down here, and it's a good thing to do. You know, if you're like not sure how to do something, just kind of go look at 2 or 3 of them and just look at different parts and say, okay, I like that. Let me do that with my words, my thoughts. And so obviously the next place we're going is storytelling, and storytelling is an innate human thing. When people are drawing walls on caves hundreds of thousands of years ago, they were telling a story. You run into somebody at the grocery store or somewhere, you know, somewhere out and about, and you say, hey, what happened? Or how are you? What's been going on? We're asking for a story. We're giving stories. Well, I did this and I did that. And hey, did you know so-and-so got married? Well, telling a story of different things in different ways. So storytelling is really innate to us, and we can all connect to it in different ways. All right, so let's see. What do you need to do? Here's what you need to do. Those key components for storytelling. We looked at the description ones. What do you need to do? Well, first of all, get in the space. Forget this freaking for English class or for freaking English class or for English class freaking. I was trying to get it in all over the place, right? Screw English class. And you can go home and say that. My teacher said screw English class. So that was my math teacher? Nope, that was my English teacher. Forget this is for English class. Just let go of that. You're going to come in, have this done on Thursday, and you're going to get a 100, right? Cool, man. Let go of that. You want to create immediacy by writing in the present and the personal. Don't say when I walk into your room, because I'm going to be like, dude, that's weird. No, I don't walk into your room. Say when I walk into my room, because that does put us first-person shooter video games. Why are they so popular? Because it puts us in that moment in the scary movie when we are in the person's eyes and we're looking around and we're telling them to look behind them. Just turn your head. We just want the camera to turn around, right? Because we are in their shoes. So that creates a whole lot of really kind of dramatic tension. So I, me, my, when I did this, just real simple, straightforward. Show, don't tell, use dialogue, automatopoeia, and deep description. I just like the word automatopoeia. How often do you get to use it? I get to use it as many times as I teach 1301 per semester. Automatopoeia. It just means, and you really don't have to use this, but like whenever we say instead of the dog was barking, the dog went roof, roof, roof. That's it. It's a word that symbolizes a sound, and I just like to say the word automatopoeia, and now you know what automatopoeia means. Now, spelling is a different chore. Thank God for spell check. Yeah. But the thing is when you can, get somebody's voice in there. If somebody says something, don't just say my mom said she was proud of me. I'm proud of you, said my mom. It's a lot stronger. Here, we'll go back. Okay, there's that stuff's in there too. So here's my story of getting this book from Amy. And I think it's a little English teachery. I think it really represents kind of where I was at whenever I wrote this. When I started doing this essay, I think looking at the student sample shows how this essay's evolved and how my students have really excelled the me I was then, which is totally cool. So this is the part where, I don't know, I'm okay with it. We'll see. Shut up, Kelly. Quit defending it. Outside the English building at New Mexico State University, there's a concrete bench where my friends and I often gather to talk. It wasn't unusual that Amy showed up on that day. In fact, it would have been more unusual if she hadn't. It was unusual, however, that she extended her hand to me and said, "Here." Grasped in her fingers was a plastic grocery bag wrapped haphazardly around something. "It's your Christmas present," she smiled. "Early." I reached through the crinkled bag, smiling at the knowledge that Amy was never good at wrapping presents. And I'm sorry, I have to stop here by command of Amy. She now wraps presents very wonderfully. Thank you very much. If she asks, I told you that. At first touch, the woven texture of cloth covering revealed the bag's contents. Before I pulled the book out, I seemed to smell the dustiness that comes with sitting on a shelf for so long. The binding on the left was an all too bright orange, a remnant of 1929, edged by small wisps of thread loosened over time. The front and back covers were a slate blue. I opened the cover and read Elmer Gantry. I lifted the book to my nose, my right hand still between the cover and the title page. There was the chalkiness of dust, the potent age of mold. I saw it, and I had to get it for you. I knew you had to have it. Amy was beaming. This book now stands among others dusty with age, bearing scars of wear, abuse, love. From behind the frayed cloth binding on the outer corners, bland static cardboard peeks out. Between the R and the Y of gantry, the remnant of a price tag or sticker speaks of the book's past lives. I imagine Amy, who inscribed the book, to Kelly from Boston's Brattle Bookstore, Amy, standing in between the shelves piled high, noticing these details as I would do when buying a book for her. We, in our different times, see the pages faded to manila, darker around the edges, framing the text. We flip through them looking for evidence of previous owners, something more to share with the past. We feel the coarse texture of the paper, a texture so unlike a new book's slick pages. At the end of the novel are listings of the publisher's other new releases. The novels of Grace Livingston Hill tops a column of titles never read in our English classes. Inside the back, between the cover and the spine, the netting that provides support and creates durability steals out like a lace undergarment. I wish I'd have started with this. It's your Christmas present, she smiled, early. I had been sitting outside the English building at NMSU where, everybody would hang out and talk. Amy had showed up, pulled a bag out of her backpack and said, "Here." Grasped between her fingers was a plastic grocery bag, blah, blah, blah. That's how I'd revise that now. Because I think just starting with the, it's your Christmas present early, I feel like that's much more dynamic. Like, I'm like, okay, cool, get people in there. So, I don't know. I would do a lot of things differently now. Now, when you look back at your writing, have you ever pulled anything out, found anything cleaning from high school or whatever, and looked at it? Anybody? What was your reaction? Anyway, God. Nobody else? That moment of mortification. I wrote that? Oh, shit. Dude, what was I doing? You say cool. Because that's when you say, wow, I've grown. I'm better. I can look at this now and say, dude, I would have done it. I wish I'd have done that different, right? And so that's why I keep leaving it up here, because I want you to understand that as you kind of go through life, one, are you the same person you were last year or the year before or 10 years ago? No. I mean, we're different. We see things differently. So sometimes it's perspective. Sometimes, and then a lot of times, it's just growth in learning how to do things better. So the things I like about this are where I have Amy in there, those like real moments. And here's where I think I went off into my being English teachery too much. This was a lot closer to whenever I finished grad school and, just started working. So I kind of felt like I had to be all pinky in the air English teachery. There's just this pressure to be that way. And then I was able to let that go because, make no pretense of being cool. That just doesn't quite work for me. But the point is I work to tell a story. And then the other point is that I think you can see that Reuben, that Timothy, that Miranda, that so many of these we've already read tell stories better than I did here. So this gives you a start, but think about how they did that. But most of all, think about how you see and hear your story in your mind. Because you're going to choose some time or something that will help kind of explain and show this object. And you want to integrate it into it as much as possible. If you can put that object in your hands or in someone else's, Reuben puts that machete in Papi Huero's hands, and it's right there. It becomes much more real. Miranda, when she holds those shoes, when her dad gets them out and hands them to her, and she holds them in her hands, and she looks at them, it becomes much more real. And because she is in that eye position, I looked at them, I opened them up, I could see that olive green in the inside. All of those little details put us in that first-person shooter perspective and help us see it more clearly, too. So, blah, blah, blah. How do you do this, right? First of all, tell it step by step, right? Now, you don't have to get all the details in. Obviously, even if you're thinking about a little bitty portion of your memory, if you wrote down every single thing, we would all be like, yawn. Come on, dude, get to this point, right? So there's always a balance, and where that balance is some kind of magic. But step by step, he walked over, set down the whatever, and looked at me and said, hey, how you doing? So using those things that, she reached out and picked up a glass of water. Those little simple, straightforward details They carry weight and power. So do not, never, never, never in your writing be afraid of the simple and straightforward. Use that I, me, my. Put your reader in that spot. In that moment where you want to put you. I mean, when you're writing it, don't worry. But if you look back over it and you got a bunch of yous, well, if somebody said something, hey, you, come over here, obviously that's fine. But if you're writing when you do this, when you do that, when you walk in my bedroom, I'm going to be like, no, right? Who do you mean? Just ask yourself, who do I mean? Who do you mean? And fill that in, okay? Don't explain what you saw as much as you can, what you heard, smelled, anything like that. Doesn't always apply, right? But if you can get those other senses in there, do that. Again, it makes it more powerful. If somebody said something to you, give it in dialogue. Not mom told me to come here. Sometimes you need to do that. That fits with the flow better. But if you can say, come here, called my mom over the din of TV and the chaos of voices. I'm thinking of being a little kid at Christmas time when all the cousins are there and everything. Integrate those descriptions you developed, but don't force them. So I would say that the question about those descriptions, your list, did it make you see your object in a different light? More specifically? Were you able to say, wow, yeah, I've seen this thing, whether you actually had it or just in your mind's eye time after time, but I never really noticed those things? That's the point of that is to say, look, do this description, think it through. So as you write your story, you want, if you get some reference into there, and like I said, if you can put it into action or in somebody's hands, something like that. Guillotine of Love is a great one. It's about this tortilla press that one of my students, her grandfather had made for her grandma, and it's this big old hulky, like heavy thing, and smash your fingers and everything. But it's great because you get to see it in action. So those are the overall tips, right? Keep it in that first person as much as you can. I, this, that. Don't avoid the simplicity. If you can have somebody talking, do that. If things smell, anything like that, do that. And remember, it's really hard to describe. Like you could say it smelled like this, like these ingredients, and that works. But sometimes it's hard to get that. Remember that it's always those comparisons. You can say it's like this, or it's like that, or it reminds me of this or that. And so that helps too. So your job, a couple of paragraphs, 2 or 3 paragraphs. Write a story. Think of a time about your object. So whether it's like when you got this thing, or maybe it's if it represents somebody, like that with Timothy's, it's when he bought his iPod. With Reuben's, it's when he got this thing, or not when he got this thing, but just thinking back to his grandpa when he was little, when he always had this machete. With Miranda's, it's when she actually got it. Right? So what is it? What is it that comes to your mind as you're doing this? 1 or 2 stories, right? You might just have one. You might have a couple of them. A minimum of 2 or 3 paragraphs. If the clouds part and the sun shines down and angelic voices sing and you are moved to write more words, don't stop, because the more words you get down, the more you have going into this essay, right? That doesn't always happen. So, sometimes it's just writing, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And sometimes it comes down to self-discipline too. But if you're moved, man, let those words just come out, because, more words is good words. When it comes to putting this essay together, you'll already have more. And if that doesn't happen, as is so often the case, remember, a story is just what's next. You ask yourself, what happened next? What did I hear? What was said? What happened next? What next? What next? And that's how you get through a story, step by step, one moment at a time. That's it. Cool beans. Frijoles.